Hi, this is episode 14 of Data Product Mindset. I'm Anthony Cosgrove, the co-founder of Harvard Data, the private data and AI marketplace platform for governing the discovery, access, and use of data and AI products. Today, I'm joined by Mike Salk, a commercial data executive who's worked across a range of data businesses, functions, and data products. His core focus has always been on optimizing P&L. Mike, this has been a really long time coming. I'm super happy to have you on this podcast. Very excited about the conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So can we've got 20 minutes and there's a lot to pack in. So can we just jump straight in? Data products for a lot of people who listen to this is something that's kind of evolved and emerged in the last couple of years. But obviously for you, this has, been your entire career. You've been doing this for decades now. Can you tell us how you think about data products and give us some examples of the data products that you've managed?
Sure. So data products to me is just a product. It's just solving a customer's problem. At the end of the day, it's getting information into a customer's hands so they can do their job as effectively as possible. Some customers will be comfortable using a Python notebook. Others will be wanting to use Excel. Others may be using an internally built application. For me, building data products has been about how do I get the data to them in as simple a manner as possible so it meets their utility. So you asked the question about examples, and I'm going to go back several years to an example from when I was at the Associated Press. And in the US, the Associated Press is the largest news organization. They're like the Press Association in the UK or Reuters on an international level. And most people think of them as a news organization. The AP at the time was the largest market data vendor in the Americas. It was delivering financial data to more people on a daily basis than any other vendor in the US, more than Bloomberg, more than Reuters, more than Thomson. And my team was bringing in data from every exchange in the world. It was bringing in cash data quotes where we had to get on the phone and call and say, what's the West Texas crude intermediate price today? And load all of that into a centralized system, which, okay, that sounds complicated. The complicated part was not actually getting all the data. While that was complicated, the biggest complication was every newspaper and broadcaster had their own time of day that they wanted the data. Every newspaper had different amount of space in their newspaper for how much stock data they could have. So on a daily basis, they might say it's a big news day, and we only want companies with a market cap larger than X, whereas the next day they might say we want to take the open price out and we only want the high, low, and close just to fit space. So our system had to offer complete customization for the customer. And that flexibility needed to be very, extremely responsive, that they could call us at 2:00 and say, we need this by 4 so we can meet our evening press run. And to me, that was a real data product that we were offering mass customization for thousands of end users. And we had no idea on a daily basis what any of them wanted, but the system just had to work, or the newspaper wouldn't hit the doorstop on time in the morning. So wow. That's an example of a data product to me.
Awesome. And so can you say how many years ago that was, or are we giving
that was 20 years ago. In addition to supporting their print needs, we were also supporting their online needs. So newspapers would have a website that you could enter a stock price or a stock ticker, and you could get a price back. So
got it.
It sounds quite archaic today to think about stock information in newspapers.
Well, it does, but I think the principles of and the challenges that you've had there are probably as true today as they were then. So you've kind of focused on, a challenging process for gathering the data together and turning it into something valuable. But then on the flip side of that, you've got something that, in your words, is even more challenging, which was meeting the specific customer needs, and a lot of that data requiring mass customization. I mean, is that something 20 years on that you think is now no longer a challenge, or is it just as much of a challenge, but it's taken kind of different forms and different structures?
I think it continues to be a challenge in uh, any data set is what is the job the end user is going to be doing? Uh, as I've spent a lot of my career around financial data, so working with financial professionals, understanding, where they're going to be doing their modeling, making sure that the data can be exported into the environment that they want to use. So if that's a desktop product and they're going to live in Excel, make sure you can get it into Excel. Uh, but in general, I think it is the core problem for all data products is getting the data to the end user. Um, and the delivery, while complicated, so I said having the data is complicated, delivering the data is complicated. It's plugging it into the customer's workflow is probably the most complicated, because as data people, we oftentimes think we are the only data set they're using. And we have to step back and realize the user they want our data to integrate with their own views, their own data sets, and potentially data from our competitors, other vendors. So how do you make sure the keys are there that they can link up all of those data assets? And that my internal key might be, I'll use financial data again. I'm in the US. QSIPs are used for identifying securities. On an international basis, it's iSense. If all I did was deliver stocks with a QSIP and somebody's system was built to have iSINs, and I did not uh, provide an ISIN along with QSIP, they're going to have to write some code on their side to add the US to the front of the QSIP, add a check digit, so then it can fit into their ISIN field, so we can then connect them with other data sets they have. That's just one complication. Another complication is they might have the address of a company or the name of a company, and I have the name slightly different. International Business Machines. How many ways can you abbreviate that? So, when they pull it down, and integrate it, it's like, wait a second, we think it's the same company. Is it the same company? So
Exactly.
addressing those anomalies.
Awesome. So you kind of highlighted, I guess, there are three big areas of increasing complexity there. The complexity of getting the data that you need and getting it into a shape where it's a product, interacting with the customer and being able to get it to them in the way that they want and need, and then that final part of helping them to really integrate it into their workflow. So I know, I mean, your career has really been around optimizing the P&L. So could you talk a little bit around, I don't know if you have like particular kind of mental models or frameworks around how you do that for those various areas. Like what have you learned along the way?
So there's many pieces to this, and since we only have 20 minutes, I'll stay at a very high level here, with just a couple of those pieces.
Sure.
Um, the the first piece is um, data quality, and a lot of times we think data quality will be addressed when if the customer raises a question. So, and I look at it at that data quality needs to be built into the system as the first step. You need to build checks and balances to, if you have a field that's supposed to have 5 characters in it, make sure there's 5 characters. If there's a required element that needs to be there, make sure it's populated. If a data anomaly, so if something can change on a daily basis by a couple of percentage points, and have checks in there that say if it goes up more than 20%, flag that, and then have a team that is focusing on the data quality. Because data quality could be there's a supplier has made a change or there's an issue in the system, but build those checks in early. Why do I highlight that from a P&L standpoint? The most expensive step in managing data I have found is when a customer picks up the phone and calls and says, there's an issue with the data. As soon as that happens, it's not, while you may have a team that will say, we'll jump on that, what you're oftentimes doing is you're needing to pull engineers off of other projects. It could be your data stewards off of other projects. It's a disruption to your workflow. So you're reducing your efficiency as a company. So number one is build tools and solutions up front to handle data and have the data checks in place. That's a P&L piece.
Yep.
Another piece is mass customization can be done, and the Harbor platform allows customers to go in, choose their rows and columns, and get what they want. But build that into your system early on. Don't have it that every time you have a new customer engagement that you need to then have your engineers build a new solution. Years ago, I was at a company that had 3 data feeds, 3 APIs. We had a customer who bought all 3 APIs. The customer couldn't integrate them because all the APIs had different data schemas, different structures. Documentation was different. We made it expensive for the customer to integrate the data. So what they did is they said, it's your problem. You solve this for us. And I had to pull an engineer off of actual other work to build a custom solution for that customer to integrate my 3 products. That was awkward, very awkward.
Cool, awesome. And I mean, just sort of sorry to interrupt, but a couple of times there you've spoken about the cost for the customer. You kind of mentioned it just then in terms of integrating your own data sets with each other. You mentioned the cost for yourselves in terms of disruption, and then you mentioned again the cost for the customer earlier on. You're one of the only people that I've spoken to over the years who really does seem to obsess about TCO for the customer. So could you just talk me through that? Because you could argue that feels maybe contrary to optimizing the P&L, but I know you'll have a good reason for why it isn't.
So I'll use an example. I met with a customer once, and they were on renewal. They were complaining about a price increase, and understandable. They want to manage their expenses, and I spent time asking them some questions. And the questions I started with was, do you know how many times you touch my feed? I deliver 1 feed to you. Do you know how many times you touch it? And they were like, no. I'm like, well, our data, we've looked at it, and we've identified that you have 11 different processes accessing that same feed. And that's fine. You're licensed to do that, but that's very expensive for you. That means you have at least 11 internal teams accessing the data set, downloading the data set, integrating it into your environments, and your costs are now much higher than just what you're paying me. It shows that you have value, you value the information, but your total cost is very high. And so I spent some time with them, and we also talked about the differences by loading it 11 times, that Team A, Team B, and Team C are going to have different views of the data depending on the time of day they might upload that data set. So if it's information that's updating throughout the day and one's job runs at 1, another 2, another 3, they're all going to have a slightly different view. So it actually reduces their consistency. So we spent time talking to them. We actually spent time with their engineers then talking about how they could bring the data in once or twice versus 11 times and improve their process. At the end of a year, I spoke to the procurement team at the client again, and they said, you know what, you just helped us reduce our costs. And why is that important? Because then I can talk to them about buying other data from me.
Yeah.
The whole reason I want them to do business is so they buy more. It's like a restaurant. You want someone to come back a second, a third, a fourth time if they really enjoy eating there. Come back breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That would be great. Don't just
Yeah.
come in for dinner. And that's how I looked at it. Let them, show them that I'm a partner of theirs, and then they'll buy more from me.
Got it. So that's almost a case of, you see TCO as the overall wallet, and anything you can do either on your side or in collaboration with the customer to reduce TCO effectively frees up wallet, hypothetically, where you can then go and kind of sell them more data or sell them other services that would be useful, but they can't currently afford because the TCO for what they have at the moment is so high. Is that fair?
At the end, it is fair. At the end of the day, we all exist for our customers. If our customers weren't buying our products, then we're not going to be in business anymore. So how do we build that trust with them? We want to build trust with high quality data. We want to build trust with high quality services, and we want to build trust because they feel that it's good value for money, and that we're not just out for as a vendor. I'm not just out selling them a product to make money. I'm out there selling them a product that I want them to use as effectively, as efficiently, and as effectively as possible. So yes, I think if total cost of ownership that's the key measure. That they're going to renew. They're more likely to renew if they feel they're getting good value for their spend on the content.
Awesome. And you've kind of crunched through very, very quickly quite a few really important, crucial components. What would be the things that you would say to your younger self in terms of lessons learned and things that you kind of maybe take for granted now, but you maybe learned them the hard way as you were kind of going through your career around data products?
I didn't when I was my younger self. I oftentimes didn't think about what the customer was doing with the content, and that was the real light bulb moment when I started spending time talking to them about what's your end function, how are you using this information. That's really been probably the most important part of my career, is understanding that user, what the users are doing, why they're doing it. Because at the end of the day, build the best product in the world, but if there's no utility for someone to use it to then do their job, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, indeed. And did you kind of, as you had that light bulb moment, kind of what changed? Did you start to, because it's already kind of coming through a little bit in the conversation, did you start to obsess about the customer experience, about their TCO, about their use cases, about how they're integrating? Is that what changed, or was it something else?
The biggest thing that changed was thinking about how to deliver the content more effectively to the user. I love telling this story. Much of the financial markets for non-real-time data, so more descriptive data, still runs using file transfer protocol.
Sure.
The file transfer protocol standard was last updated in the mid-'80s. And it works. That's great. That doesn't mean it's the most efficient means to deliver the content because it works. And that to me has been, it's been great to go in and talk to a customer and say, well, yeah, you want to reduce your costs. Let's talk about other more efficient ways you can bring the content in. And by having that TCO conversation, it actually helps the sales process. And procurement staff oftentimes don't understand technology. It allows them to go talk to their internal business users about, there may be a better way we can do this. And they look, they look like the hero leading the charge on reducing overall costs for the firm.
Awesome. And just last question here. So, you've been in this space for a long time. You've seen data move from providing files that get printed in newspapers through SFTP, and hopefully now into kind of more modern, cloud-based databases and solutions and everything in between. Where do you see data products heading? And I guess, where would you like to see them heading based on your experience?
I'll throw one other before I answer that question, just very quickly. I used to love error correcting modems when they were first introduced, because before error correcting modems, and this was before I was in industry, but you used to you'd be online and things would get glitch, and I would explain to people that's like you're on a bridge and there's a motorcycle zooming in and out to try to get off the bridge faster than the cars that entered. Error correcting modems made that motorcycle wait in line so the data was clean coming through the pipes. But where do I see us going with data products? I think in this world, it's unlocking data from proprietary platforms and integrating it deeper into customer workflows. There's a lot of solutions out there in every marketplace that there's closed platforms. And as we look at the advantage, artificial intelligence coming out, generative AI being really developed, when you go into a browser today and you ask a question and Gemini or ChatGPT can come back and it's looking at multiple places for that information. I see that happening with data products, that we as product teams need to think about how do we unlock our data assets to more deeply integrate where that customer is, where that end user is. And while that's been a trend, I see it becoming even more important with technology advances today with generative AI, because end users are going to be building many of their own solutions. The non-engineer will be able to say, get me data from here, these 5 different locations, and bring it all together. As data product owners, we need to enable that transition.
Amazing. That's great. I kind of feel like generative AI has almost accelerated this need for data to be more accessible and more integrated. And it kind of almost feels as though it's brought it to a point where it's demonstrating kind of the challenges and the issues for everybody. And to your point, not just for technical users who are probably well aware of that and have been for some time, but increasingly to non-technical users and business users who were unaware that there was this sort of kind of latent problem around interoperability and connectivity for different tech. Is that something that you'd agree with, or do you have a different take on that?
I do agree with that. And generative AI is the new calculator. It's the new PC. It's a tool, and it's a tool that is just going to become more and more useful for the non-technical users. And I think that's awesome. And as content creators, content owners, data owners, we need to think about our products really integrating within these new technologies. So yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I use generative AI every day, and the ways I'm using it keeps evolving, and I just expect that we'll see data products need to be made more useful as the technology continues to evolve.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, sadly, that's the end of our time, so we'll have to end it there. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. As I said at the start, I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. It's been great having you on, and super interesting to hear kind of all those stories and kind of those interesting kind of models and frameworks that you have in your mind as you manage data products at scale. You can connect with Mike on LinkedIn, and if you find this podcast interesting, please check out the other episodes on harbourdata.com. Thank you for watching.